It is not my intention in any way to seem facetious when I ask you if in fact you do happen to remember the Alamo. 1836, San Antonio, Texas. You have a group of men and women, some quite advanced in years, and a number of children, all caught up in a standoff within the confines of a vulnerable garrison, outside of which they are surrounded by an adversary comprising hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of soldiers under Santa Anna. This small group of people in lockdown are holding out as best they can, awaiting reinforcements to come and save the day. These reinforcements do end up arriving, but as history tells, they do not save the day. And all of those men, women, and children were killed. It was a bloodbath, it was a slaughter, it was a massacre. Now, while you are remembering the Alamo, I wonder if you likewise happen to remember a month or so ago, likewise in Texas, likewise in what turned out to be a vulnerable and yet at the same time apparently insurmountable compound, occupied by men, a lot of women, and many, many children, all of whom were caught up in a standoff against one lone adversary. Whilst outside, they were surrounded by reinforcements, numbering in what might as well have been hundreds and hundreds. I say this because these reinforcements, under the guise of law enforcement, had at their back the might of the state. Intermingled with these reinforcements, you had men and women who in turn comprised the parents, the mothers and fathers, corresponding with the children in this standoff. Now, there is no need to revisit what happened, save to illustrate that what happened was, for all intents and purposes, a complete reversal of the Alamo, the opposite of the Alamo. But you see, likewise in tandem with this horrific day, you have another phenomenon, something else happening concurrently. Let me put this into perspective in the following way. I will call upon your imaginations. Imagine, if you will, imagine, if you can, being a police chief or a police commissioner and having an advisor coming up to you and saying to you, "Police Commissioner, I must advise you that from this point forward, the police can no longer count on the support of the left wing. We can no longer count on the support of the liberals, of the extremists, of the radicals, of the anarchists, of the anarcho-punks. We can no longer count on the support of the political activists, the ones who run around saying, defund the police. We can no longer, from this point forward, count on any of these groups for support." As the police commissioner, at some point you would interject and say, "What are you talking about? Since when did we ever count on support from any of those elements? They all see us as the enemy. We never once looked to any of them for supporting the police in any way at any time. What are you talking about?" Now, imagine being a police commissioner and having that self-same advisor come up to you and say, "Police Commissioner, I must advise you that from this point forward, we can no longer count on the support of all of those people who say Blue Lives Matter. We can no longer count on the support of the people who believe in a thin blue line. We can no longer count on the support of these people, some of whom laughingly ran around saying, 'I can breathe.' We can no longer count on the support of these silent majority, grassroots, middle Americans, the suburbanites, the soccer moms. We can no longer count on the support of our greatest fan base, the ones who ultimately had our back no matter what. The people who believe solidly in the idea of, he's my president, right or wrong. We can no longer count on the support of the choir that sang our praises the loudest. We can no longer count on the support of our number one supporters. Now, as the police commissioner, you would have to stand there and ponder, what must you have done? What could you have done in order to lose that support? What unimaginable, horrific thing, what would you have had to have done that would have amounted to a literal stab in the back betrayal of the trust of these people who had your back no matter what? What could you have done as a police force to lose that support? I will put it in further proper perspective for you. Whether you know this or not, in Texas, football is king. Football is everything. The sun rises and sets on football in Texas. And if you happen to be an all-star pro football Texas athlete, the world becomes your toilet. You can do anything that you want to do. If you are a Texas all-star football pro athlete, it has been established, not metaphorically, but literally, you can get away with murder. Now, imagine being a Texas all-star pro football athlete and losing that support, losing that fan base, losing those cheerleaders, losing that Super Bowl Sunday stadium mob screaming your name. Imagine losing that support, and imagine what stupefying thing you would have had to have done. What unspeakable action you would have had to have committed in order to lose that kind of support. That also happened that day. Oh, not across the charts, of course. There are always holdouts, fanatics, sycophants. Nevertheless, the damage inflicted is irreversibly done. As I understand it, some of those parents were penalized, were in fact attacked for trying to run in there and save their children, for attempting to do that which the police refused to do up until the very end. The police, Texas police, Texas law enforcement, which is supposed to be the living, breathing, modern-day embodiment of the very spirit of the Texas Rangers. The Texas Rangers, the legendary peace officers of the Lone Star State. It is often said, don't mess with Texas. And they say this for a reason. But it is also said that a house divided against itself cannot stand. Now, in speaking of sayings, it will always be said, remember the Alamo. But whether it is said or not, no one in that state and in this country and in the entire world is ever going to forget what happened that day in that school deep in the heart of Texas.